guys? Yeah. The first thing is homeless shelter. A little update on that. We have filed our letter with certain legal objections in terms of the safety of the building, in terms of the variance which controls the what can go into the building. Of course, we now have problems since the mayor has declared an emergency, basically with the immigrant issues coming to the city. We don't know what that does to other legal issues or gives them a way out. But our firm is going to be meeting with the mayor in the coming 3 or 4 weeks, I understand, and has going to bring up what we proposed. We've put 2 proposals out there, one of which I think you'll know, the second one you may not be familiar with, and that is we suggested the size of the building could take 18 to 20 homeless people in terms of permanent efficiency apartments. There'd be a permanent place for them to live, to move things forward. Number 1, or number 2, we would take an immigrant population, okay, and all the immigrants that would ship to New York, and they could also use that building, probably a few more than that, maybe 20, 25. And we've talked to the schools, and like St. Anastasia, we spoke to them, and they were looking into that they'd be willing to maybe take children if they came with a family to the area. And of course, we could go to the local school that's here. So that's in the state of flux. Nothing's been decided, nothing's been determined, but we're continuing to work on that. I think that's. Any questions on that? Before I move it on? No. Yes.
Has construction continued? Have they restarted construction?
Yes, they've restarted construction. Our injunction expired, and they are redoing. They're redoing the building. We've done partitions inside, replaced the windows. We understand that the Department of Social Services is talking about next spring, late spring, to possibly use it. So they have things to still do with it. Meantime, we're negotiating. I mean, we'll probably know by Thanksgiving where we stand as a community, okay? And then we'll work with them, whoever comes there, but we'll try to make it something that's more functional. In respect to the minutes which were sent out, are there any corrections, subtractions, deletions, corrections in the minutes? The board? No. Okay, so they stand as written. Chris has been taking our notes for tonight, the minutes. That's it. Okay, I have no more. Dennis, Santos, please step up.
Hello, everyone. So we have tonight our assembly candidates and our state senate candidates, and then our rounding out the evening our 2 candidates for representative in the U.S. Congress in this area. So without further ado, let's start with the 2 candidates for the assembly. Zimmerman and Braunstein, the Democratic candidate, and Rob Speranza, the Republican candidate. You guys want to come up? Yeah, I figured if they're going to make it better from stand, we can make you guys stand, right? So, okay, the ground rules here are we're going to have opening statements of up to 4 minutes each, then question and answer from both the moderator and the audience of about 15 minutes, and then we'll have very brief closing statements of up to a minute each. So we didn't choose lots. Let's do it alphabetically, which I guess would mean Whit goes first.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis, and thank you, Sean, and thank you, everybody, for being here. Full house tonight. Rob, it's good to see you. I've known Rob. Me and Rob are both longtime Bayside people. We've known each other for a long time. And one thing I can tell you between Rob and I, you're going to have a civil campaign. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Assemblyman Ed Braunstein. I've represented the Douglaston community. It's been a privilege since 2011. I live in Bay Terrace with my wife Stephanie and my 3 children. My 2 boys are in 2nd grade and 1st grade, and my daughter is 3. And I'm asking for your vote to continue to serve in the State Assembly. Perhaps the biggest issue that we're facing as a city and a state right now is the rise in crime and concerns about public safety. And look, if we're going to get our city to recover from the pandemic fully, we need sure our city's safe. We want people to go back to the office. We want tourism to get kick-started. We want people to go to Broadway shows, and we can't do that if people don't feel safe. Not to mention, just for our own quality of life, we need crime to go down. Now, one of the issues that we've been seeing with crime is the issue of repeat offenders, right? We read the stories in the newspaper, such as, an offender's been arrested 20 times, 30 times, and they just keep getting released. So when we passed the 2019 bail reform law, the point was that we had a system where two individuals accused of the same offense, a low-level offense, if one person had a friend or family member with a couple $1,000 and the other person didn't, one person went home to await trial and the other person was stuck on Rikers Island for months at a time. That was the issue that we sought to address. Once it was passed, we had this issue with repeat offenders. We cannot sustain as a society people continuing to commit offenses and going in and coming out. A small number of people are driving up the numbers in the crime. So this past budget, we passed legislation to close the repeat offender loophole and give judges and district attorneys discretion to set bail on the second offense. I still see the stories where people are coming out. It maddens me because I know we closed the loophole, and I'm committed to getting to the bottom of figuring out what is going on. If we need to go back in January and make further changes to the law, I'll do that. I'll sit down with all the stakeholders, the district attorneys, the judges, the legislature, the Adams administration. I'm proud to have been endorsed by the New York City PBA. I will talk to them about these issues. We need to get it right. We cannot sustain what is going on any longer, just for the future of our city. And it's not the intent of the law. The intent of the law was, like I said, first-time offender, some kid who's stuck in Rikers Island awaiting trial. They haven't even seen the evidence against him. But these repeat offenders, these career criminals, we have to make sure that we stop that. Another issue with public safety we're seeing is a lot of these violent, unprovoked attacks, like we've seen on the subway. And a lot of the perpetrators of these crimes are people who have clear mental health issues. And we need to do a better job as a city, of providing resources, of increasing psychiatric beds, having outreach teams on the subway to make sure that we get these people help and we get them out of a difficult situation. 30 seconds. And look, I could go on about that. The other issue that I'm running on is that we've seen recent changes at the Supreme Court where they rolled back the 50-year decision of Roe v. Wade. Right now, abortion rights are left to the states. And I voted for the Reproductive Health Act in 2019 to codify Roe v. Wade because we knew this was coming. And I'll commit to you that I will not vote to repeal that law. If, a lot of people say, well, it's not an issue. If enough people get elected that are anti-choice, they will roll back that law. So it is an issue. If we elect enough people, women will no longer have reproductive freedom in the state. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rob Speranza, and like I said, we've known each other 15 years. I'm a retired New York City police officer. I've seen the crime over the years, how it's changed. And I get along a lot of things, but we differ in politics. I have to say that. I've seen the bail reform, an axe murderer comes out after a couple of days, gets rearrested again. We need to repeal it. We need to change it. But we also need to institute things that will change the mentality. Mental ill people do not need to be on the streets of New York. They need to be financed. They need to be housed. There's a lot of heroin facilities, places that aren't being used because they do get molested in there. They get robbed. They don't go. If we turn them into facilities where they can get treatment, that probably will stop this repetitive behavior. Also, if we provide, say, like a parole situation, you get released from mental, you report to somebody over and over again, and you stay in check. But right now, we have none of that. You have people getting released, committing crimes over and over again. Mentally ill people, a woman I worked with was stabbed 20 times, an EMS worker. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. I'm not afraid of making waves. I'm not afraid of danger. Lord knows I'm without a raise. And my thing is to take care of my community. I've been doing that for 35 years. I'm 17 years old. I volunteer with the ambulance corps. I volunteer with Knights of Columbia, Fraternal Order of Police, you name it. I'm a police officer. I'll bleed blue, and I'll die defending what I believe is right. I think New York City needs to be taken back from the criminals. The legislator writing rules and the writing legislation does not stop problem. Otherwise, if you write a law against murder, then it won't happen, right? People don't follow rules. We need to aggressively go after the criminals. criminals that are carrying guns. We need to aggressively go after people that need help, and not just legislate. It's more than that. And together, I think we can do it together. Me, you, everybody, we can get this done. That's pretty much, I think it's covered everything. Do I answer questions now, or? It's very quick, I know. It's, you know.
No,
but-
that was good, that was concise. I was even gonna give you extra time, because I think you did great.
No, that's fine, no. It's just, I want us to work together.
No, but I like
And
concise.
I'm not
I like
afraid, you know,
concise.
I'm not afraid to go out there and get things done. I locked up a child, multiple gang members, and they had knives, guns, and I gave them a chance to talk to military recruits. I ran into a kid 15 years later, a few years ago, who was fixing airplanes for $120 grand a year, a skill he learned in the military. And not directing the children as much as we should be into getting trade schools. And also having them staffed with neuropsychologists, because maybe they have ADD, maybe they have PDD. Maybe they can't do well in school, they don't like school for that particular reason. So if we have a facility where we can teach them discipline, because maybe they're not getting that at home, education, so maybe they like college, or if we can identify any special problems, and then trade schools if they're just not college staff. A friend of mine's living in Leicester on the water, Malvern on the water, being an electrician. But we have to stop, we have to provide alternatives, and not just say go free, and that's what I'm hoping to do. And that's what I'm hoping.
I'll let you- Questions here. We've said ground rules is we ask the candidates to keep their responses to 75 seconds. We'd ask the audience to be even more concise if possible. So, questions? Yes, Christine.
How do both of you feel about reopening Creedmoor as a mental facility for all the repeat offenders that have mental problems?
I mean, look, the Creedmoor is 100 acres of property, and the city and state are looking about, you know, what they want to do there. You know, there's transitional housing for people with mental health issues there already. There's a group, TSI New York, that has, what they do is they take people with mental health issues, they provide them housing, they try to get them jobs. You know, that's also the assembly district we represent, so we want to make sure that if we're going to bear our share of the burden, that we're not bearing a disproportionate amount as the rest of the city. So, you know, what comes of that 100-acre property is something that's of a big concern to the entire community. And, you know, we do want to, you know, do our fair share, but we want to be careful and make sure that we don't do more than our fair share.
Rob?
Yeah, I'm totally in favor of it. I have taken many mentally ill people off the street, and people, it works. We need a place to house them. It needs to be refurbished. It needs to get overhauled. But it's a great place where they can do it. It needs to be monitored, you know, where people are staying there. But there's no reason why it shouldn't be used. It's property we own, and whatever it takes to try to get that going, I actually will do. I can commit to that.
Yes.
Regarding education, do you feel there's support on the part of the teachers for the kinds of redirecting or assessing the students' capabilities and helping them finding a more productive future?
Is that what you want to answer?
Yeah, I'll let you say it first anyway.
No problem. The teachers are very pro-education. Unfortunately, their hands are tied a lot of the times with what they're able to do. I'm a very big proponent of bringing the gifted intelligence program. There's a lot of parents training they want their kids to do it successfully. And now, what I understand, there's a recommendation system. So not everybody in there is in the same system. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what some people tell me. And I only have a way of knowing that from, you know, people tell me. And so what I would do is bring that system back. And also, we need schools where kids who aren't gifted and talented, but also who are average intelligence, but can do better. And we need to actually put schools into them so they're in the same grouping and they can learn at an advanced level too. Right now, in the 12-1, from what I understand, you're putting a child who can barely speak next to a kid who's brilliant and reading, and they mix them together and expect the teacher to teach them all the same. And from what I understand, that's not pretty good. That's not the way it should be. So I would like to address education that way.
Yeah, I mean, like Rob, I support gifted and talented programs, specialized schools, and screening schools. But to your question, you know, what the city has done, and it's been effective, is they have what they call community schools, right? So within a school, there'll be an office directed for special help for in-need students, poor students, students with disabilities. And these community schools, these programs provide wraparound services to those students who have issues. They guide them for, mental visits. They go so far as even to help some of the parents with job training. It's like a comprehensive strategy to help those students who are in difficult circumstances on issues that are sometimes outside of school or aren't appropriate for the classroom. And it's been an effective model. I know, we have the group Common Point Queens that, they run a lot of programs, senior programs, programs for people with developmental disabilities. But they also, in one of the high schools, run one of these community schools. And it's been a very effective model in helping those students who are kind of veering off in the wrong direction, get the extra support they need. And that's something that we in the legislature always, especially in the Assembly, make sure to fund because it's been a successful model.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes.
Rob, what have you been doing since retiring from the police department and to running for office?
Part of it was enjoying life. I was working for Delta Airlines, which actually ran into a kid who I locked up many years ago with a knife, and is now making $120,000 a year fixing airplanes. Led him towards a Marine recruiter. Enjoying life. I retired from that. COVID hit. Couldn't do much for a couple of years. I did not get vaccinated, so I had a hard time finding a job. A lot of people need to have vaccinated, and I had COVID 2 days, 3 days, I was done. It was great. No vaccination. My father, 90 years old, no vaccination. He did it in 2 days too. What he didn't meet was the staph he got in the hospital. That took a month later to cure. But then I decided shortly after that that New York is just, it's not what we knew when I was a kid. I walk home from Bell Boulevard now, and I'm afraid. I'm a retired police officer, and I'm afraid. 2 kids had their throats cut on Bell Boulevard. My father's next door neighbor was robbed by 4 guys with masks. I hear helicopters going on. I had to ask the cops what's going on. This is not the way New York is meant to be. This is not what it was supposed to be. And I have a little bit more of an aggressive way of attacking it. I have a good report with the police department. Of course they do, because I know most of them are rookies. And we got to attack it. We can't just say, legislation's not the answer. So I've been working on this. I've been thinking about this for a long time. It's not because I need a job I'm doing this. It's because I care. The reason why I built the ambulance, auxiliary police. And that's what we need to do differently this time, I think. I think it's not that it doesn't care, I'm sure he does, but it's the way I would attack it would be more proactive and actually communicate with the people. Set up people helping themselves. Okay, and people who know each other on their block and doing things so they can help the police officers too. Because we are underfunded. We actually have less funding now than they had a couple of years ago. And that's not okay. And that's not any way to do it. So I would do a lot of proactive things that way to answer that question. Thank you.
Speak to that.
The question was, what have you been doing?
He opened up a lot of other things.
No, I'm sorry. We'll take another question. Someone in the back.
Well, actually, I'm gonna, Rob's answer opened up some questions for me, and insofar as I ask questions tonight, I'm gonna balance them, with slightly different questions for each person. So, Rob, you didn't get the vax. You apparently advised your 90-year-old father not to. Putting aside the COVID vax, and the fact that we have probably in excess of 1 million dead Republicans because they didn't take Donald Trump's vaccine, but
Can't hear you.
okay, putting aside the COVID vax and the fact that the party that Rob and I belong to probably lost several 100,000 people who were talked into not taking Donald Trump's vaccine. But putting aside that, a horrifying thing to me is that some Republicans have gone beyond opposing the COVID vaccine and are now joining the old New Age far left in opposing other vaccination requirements for school children, such as measles, mumps, rubella. Would you vow in the Assembly to oppose any effort to lift those requirements for school children?
So measles, mumps, rubella, or
All of them that are currently in place.
well, here's how I feel. I had no choice on vaccinations. I got COVID working at the airport before anybody knew what So I had to deal with it just because I thought it was the flu. So I handled it, and I got respiratory problems from World Trade Center. So I was supposed to be in that dead category, didn't have it. Thank God. And so I didn't have a choice. My father doesn't go anywhere, he didn't want to. But people should have a choice. If things happen 20 years, I think from the World Trade Center, it'd be safe to breathe that in. And now a few things happen, a couple of my friends are dead. You can't always trust what people tell you 20 years ago. So I wouldn't force anybody to do anything they don't want to do.
School children.
School children, yes. Measles and mumps rubella I got, and that's been proven for over 60 years to be effective. If they come out with any new crazy ones.
Diphtheria? The current vaccination schedule.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't know of any.
And you would oppose any effort to lift it?
I would, the major one, because that's what I grew up on, and
So-
it seems like everybody's fine, but again, I don't know either. Yes, I don't.
So my flip side question to that is, unfortunately, what provoked, in my view, a lot of the lunatic anti-vax hysteria on the part of many conservatives, I can say that as a conservative, what provokes it is a lot of the lunatic actions of the health establishment in the left. We've had, until just a few months ago, 2-year-old children in daycare, masked. We had school lockdowns for 2 years. Are you willing to say that was, and now we've just seen the NAEP test results, which show the effect of that. Are you willing to say that was a dreadful mistake, and to vow that you will oppose mask requirements for school children?
So, hindsight is 20/20, right? And if you remember the beginning of the pandemic, we were at home, there were refrigerated trucks coming up. We didn't really know exactly what we were facing. In retrospect, if you look back at some of the mask mandates and some of the closings, with the data that we have now, with the information we have now, with the evolution of the virus that we see now, yes, I think you can say that maybe we should have done things differently. But at the time that those decisions were made, we were flying, just day by day, and we rely on the people that we hire as health experts to make those decisions. Now that we're where we are, if we could look back and say, look, at the beginning of the epidemic, they were telling us we didn't have to wear masks. Remember? They were telling us to wash our hands. So look, clearly there was times when they got it wrong, but I think that we hire scientists and health professionals to make these decisions. We should rely on them to make those decisions. So, that's how I feel moving forward.
So would you pledge now to oppose if we're told there's this variant or that variant, will you oppose any further shutdowns of public schools, and will you oppose?
What you're saying is, it depends on how virulent the variant is. If it's something where everybody gets it, is starting to die, then yes, we should shut down the schools. Look, it's a last resort that nobody wants to do, and we should be guided by past experience about how we move forward. But, I can't sit here and pledge to you that no matter what happens, I'm never going to say, children should have to wear masks. My 3-year-old daughter was one of those people wearing masks. I didn't, totally understand it when it kept going for so long, but, that's why we hire people, that's why we have scientists and professors. It's not for legislators to interfere with the experts that we put in those decisions.
In the equivalent situation to what we had with COVID, and I've asked Rob to stand up to the extremes in his party.
Yeah, I
so
think you're
will
over
you
your
stand
30
up to
seconds.
the-
30 seconds,
Okay.
Dennis, you're breaking your own rules.
Okay, sorry.
Not your party.
Move on, Councilor.
What? I'll open it up to other questions. Steve?
I have 2 questions. First, you've talked a lot about crime, but neither of you talked about gun control. So, what's your view? Do you think there's any rules or laws that should be implemented concerning guns in New York?
Okay, well, I haven't seen you in a long time, we used to be on the community board together for 10 years. But, to answer your question, gun control is a very broad term. I would proactively go after a gun. You can write legislation all you want. People, you ever see Goodfellas, will take the alcohol, throw it on the truck, throw it out the back door, people are gonna get them. They're gonna get guns in. So, we need to restrict that. I am in favor of a little bit, like, the, background checks. I had to go through one when I became a cop. They need to have, those are good things, you know, but people should be able to get gun permits in the house barring any mental illness. And, there's certain guidelines, common sense guidelines. But we can't just make a law saying people carry, no carry, because nobody's gonna listen to it. People, the criminals are gonna do what they wanna do.
The criminals aren't gonna listen to it.
They're not, exactly. The
The
criminals are.
law-abiding
Good people are,
citizens.
like, we're not gonna, you know, if they tell me, well, if they tell me I can't carry in Times Square, I'm not going to, because I don't wanna get in trouble. If they tell me I don't drink a drive, I'm gonna listen to it. The criminals don't care. They're getting their AR-15s. If you're making it, somebody's getting the black market. So they get, they're buying them, whether permanent or not. So we need to go and do what I used to do, is talk to a kid, or talk to people that you see, you can tell, you live here, what are you doing here, who's your friend, where does he live? Ask questions, and go, and find a gun, take it off the street. That gun off the street is a lot different, because guns, you get rid of guns, nobody has guns, and they'll go buy a bag of fertilizer, a little bit nicer outside, and they're gonna take out like they just did with homemade, I hate to use the word, but wow. So there's ways people are gonna kill people. It's not, it's taking the people who do the problems off the street. That's my big thing. I'm sorry.
Good to see you again. I was on the community board with you as well. I've voted for a lot of common sense gun laws in my time in the legislature. In 2013, we passed the SAFE Act, which bans semi-automatic assault rifles and limiting the amount of bullets that you can have in a magazine. We don't need weapons of war available to the general public. You don't shoot a deer with a automatic assault rifle, semi-automatic assault rifle. You don't need to protect your house with that. That's a killing machine. We ban those in New York State. I voted for red flag laws that allow people to petition a court to take firearms away from someone who's mentally unstable or suicidal or threatening people. We've passed background checks. Look, people have a right to have a gun in their home to protect themselves. I understand that. I understand the Second Amendment. But we don't need semi-automatic assault rifles, 30-bullet magazines, those things. When we see the school shootings around the country, every time, AR-15, AR-15, AR-15. And the federal government needs to step up and start regulating some of these things, and they fail to do it. Now, one thing I want to point out to you is when I talked about the Supreme Court of Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court also overturned New York City's 100-year concealed carry law. For 100 years, you're not allowed to walk around New York City with a concealed firearm unless you have a reason. You're a jeweler and you carry a lot of merchandise, or you're law enforcement. You're allowed to have a firearm, but we can't allow everybody to be walking around New York City on the subways and the supermarket, everybody to be carrying concealed firearms, 8.5 million people. And we had that law for 100 years. Never once did a Republican mayor or a Democratic mayor. Everybody knew it was a common sense law for our city, and the Supreme Court threw it out. So we passed legislation to prohibit guns in sensitive places. It's going through the courts. We don't need to backtrack. More guns everywhere is not the answer. Restricting guns is a way to keep everybody safe.
Okay, as a response, yeah, restricting guns is what they do now. You can't carry in Times Square, so like when we're saying good people won't, but people put a pressure cooker in Times Square, they're not going to listen to those rules. So by disarming the retired cops, or I don't know if we're exempt from that actually, I don't know how that came out in Raleigh, or accountants who, gun problems, people who are responsible, you're only leaving the criminals in those areas. I don't know if that's a great idea. I've never seen it to be a good idea in my last 30 years in law enforcement, and I don't believe it work, but, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. I believe in proactive getting those guns off the street. Getting out there, working with the police officers, and getting them off the street and destroyed.
But you're okay with people carrying guns? That's what you're saying, that you can't keep the criminals from doing it, so therefore it's okay for people not criminals.
I got news for you.
You can respond in 30 seconds to that.
Yes, sir. I've had a gun for 30 years, and I'm retired now. I don't carry. But let me tell you, with that gun, I've locked up a lot of drug dealers, attempted murderers.
You're talking about being a cop. We're not talking about cops carrying
You're talking about
guns.
guns. You said guns. You said people carrying guns.
People
I'm telling you, there are
who
good
not
people
law
out there that can
enforcement
carry guns.
officers. Everyday citizens, what he's talking about.
Okay, we can't can't, I'm sorry if I did this myself, but we can't have a debate.
Yeah, Ed's an everyday citizen. I believe if he got a gun, I don't think Ed would kill anybody. I know him all the time.
Okay, let's, no, sir, we can't.
You have to just, I'll talk to you later if you like. I can tell you first.
Since we are running behind and we've got our state senate candidates patiently waiting, let's take one more question, and then Steve, you have your chance. There's a lady in back with her hand up.
Hi, thanks. We talked about issues that are really pretty focused, but this is a state office. But when you look at the Long Island Railroad, schedule changes are coming. They publish draft schedules in July, or sorry, in June and in September. What's wrong with those schedules, and how will you advocate for your constituents?
So this is the first time they've readjusted the schedules in a long time. And they're readjusting them to implement East Side Access, which is coming in December. So the schedule is changing because you're going to be able to get on the subway and go right to Grand Central Station starting in December. There was a lot of consternation about the new proposals, particularly from people on the Fort Washington branch in Nassau, because the first proposal eliminated their express that goes straight from Great Neck into Penn Station. And when they did the new schedules, they did increase stops in Queens for Bayside, Orbandale, Broadway. I think there was some more stops in Douglaston. So when those people from Long Island went crazy because their commute time was going to be an extra 8 minutes, I'm serious, and they went crazy. And I found it a little bit offensive, right? Like it was almost like, oh God, we have to stop in Queens to pick up some people. Like, it really bothered me. So I testified at the hearing to counterbalance those folks and say, thank you MTA for increasing capacity, thank you. The MTA buckled under the political pressure a little bit from that vocal group out there, and they split it. So they gave them back a little bit of their express, but not everything they wanted. But I mean, let's look at the positive here. We're still getting the same amount of trains, but you're going to be able to go right to Grand Central. Anybody who's worked on the east side before knows how difficult it is to go to Penn and have to come back. This is something that's going to be, change a lot of people. So.
To be honest with you, I'm afraid to take the subway. So I can be pushed off, and then it just happened today, or yesterday. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. So the scheduling system, I'm not going to move that, to be honest with you on that. People are getting, you see what's happening on that train station. So I just have to look at it when it comes in front of me. And when that happens, I'll definitely do what's right for the people, because I never took $1 from lobby money or anything. So I will vote what's right for us. And that's all I can tell you on that.
Okay, so closing, Sean?
Yeah.
Sean gets asked.
Apropos of what you just, apropos of talking about the MTA and Long Island Railroad, we're talking about the extra service we're going to get. We're getting less service because the trains going in on the Port Washington branch are the same number of trains. You're just taking half of them and sending half to Grand Central and half to Penn Station. So all the people that depend upon the trains to go to Penn Station are going to get less. And the reason the express was important for us was because it took some of the excess crowding off, so people would have seats by the time they got here.
So we're going to still have our express. And the thing is, I understand half the trains are going to Grand Central. It's going to be set up in a way, at least as I understand it, that if you missed the train to Penn and you wanted to catch up to it, you get on a train to Grand Central, everything's going to stop in Woodside, and you're just going to have to walk over the track to get a train coming from Jamaica into Penn Station. So, yes, it seems like, look, you're going to have to walk across the track, but there's going to be a constant flow of trains going through Woodside from, I guess it's the Jamaica.
I guess my question for you, and for everyone, is this the state senators too. The tunnel was sunk for the East Side Access in the 1960s. I witnessed it as a child, okay? We went down with my father and watched it being sunk, okay? We've had since 1963 the opportunity to buy more trains to increase capacity to the East Side Access. The MTA has not bought any more trains. They're not scheduled to buy any more trains. So the idea that this is increased capacity is not true. It is not true. It's just changing the location where you stop the train. So the state issue is state's gotta take some of that bond money and properly spend it. Increase train capacity if you want people to drive the cars in. You're not increasing train capacity by the east side access.
So, just, from what I understand, and I'm not, entirely versed on it, a big issue that they were having with the fight out east of us in Nassau, at the Port Washington branch, was that the community was opposed to a new rail yard that they wanted to put there, which would alleviate some of the issues that you're talking about. And the MTA was saying to them, well, you want more trains, but you don't want the rail yard. And like I said, I have to get back to you, but I feel as though that there was some kind of agreement about constructing a new rail yard as part of this concession.
A ton of space in Sunnyside Yard. There was all the freight trains all over the park.
We don't get to do this either. I don't get to do it. You don't get to do it. They don't get to do it. So let's, especially when we're running behind. So let's just go over the closing statements, very brief. Rob, since everyone's here. We did, no, he's asked a question before, and we've got other candidates waiting patiently. Rob.
Okay, once again, my name is Rob Speranza, I'm a retired police officer, and I just answered the train thing. I was waiting at 3 o'clock in the morning for a bus that was never coming, and it does come to Bayside, so I do have sympathy with you on that. And there were no cops around, there was none of this stuff, and so I took out taxi. And they have this thing called contestant pricing now, I think it's like $25 to come in, and actually people voted for that, they're driving our own city, and it's got to stop. But my primary thing is if we stop the crime, we make people safer, and we stop instituting mandates that cause businesses to go out and raising taxes that cause them to go out, I believe we can take back New York City. Because right now, a lot of businesses are going out because they can't afford the taxes based on what the radical governor did and many things. I mean, she wouldn't even fire a DA. When I was a cop, I wouldn't get arrested if I didn't do my job. And I let somebody go, you're nice, let him go. You can't do that. And we had a DA that refused to prosecute criminals robbing somebody and not charge the offenders. That's not the way New York should be running. It's got to change. And anybody who thinks that's okay, I can't understand that. Maybe they can explain to me. But we got to change that. We take back New York. We go do it together, and then we go. I have no fear of going and challenging somebody. I do not. And if I say I think something's wrong, I will stand by it. And that's all I like to ask for you, is to vote for that and vote for me. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. It's been a privilege to be our community's voice in Albany for the last 12 years. I was born and raised in Bayside. Both my parents were born and raised in Bayside. I know what makes this community so special. It's the great schools, it's the safe streets, it's the low-density nature of our community that keeps it special, it's the beautiful green spaces. And I'm raising my 3 children in our community, and I'm committing to keeping it the special place that it is. And when it comes to quality of life issues, when it comes to addressing crime, I'm committed to resolving these issues. Like I said, I'm endorsed by the New York City PBA. I talked to the district attorney's office about these issues. I talked to Mayor Adams' office about these issues. And if you give me the opportunity to get back there in January, I'm going to sit down and work out with everybody, see what further changes we need to make to the bail law, make sure that we address mental health, and make sure we get our city back on track in the direction that it should be, the safest and best city in the world. Thank you very much.
Without further ado, we're going to move on to our next debate of our state senate candidate. Senator Toby Stavisky, who's represented an adjoining district for quite a while, and the Democratic candidate, Stefano Forte, the Republican candidate. In keeping with my alphabetical rule, which will also alternate parties nicely, I'll let Stefano start. Opening statements are up to 5 minutes each, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Stefano Forte. I'm running for State Senate in District 11. I was born and raised here in Queens, and I'm running for State Senate because I really believe our community is in trouble. New York is at a breaking point, and we are at a precipice, and we have a decision to make. Do we want to send somebody up to Albany who is going to be tough on crime, somebody who is going to go to Albany and tackle inflation, or somebody who is not going to do any of those things? You know, I'm committed to cleaning up our streets. I want to make sure that repeat offenders are put behind bars. I want to make sure that judges have discretion for those that come in front of them. Right now, our judges have zero discretion whatsoever. And we heard before about the changes that were made to the bail law. Crime is not going down. If the changes to the bail law were working, crime would be going down. But it is not. Just the other day, we saw a member of the Green Goblins, I know it's crazy, the Green Goblins street gang attacking somebody on the subway. Then they're picked up and they're released. 2 of them were released. Judges are saying that they do not have the discretion they need. They have sent a letter to Governor Hochul saying that these changes make no sense. The law is too vague. We don't know what to do. I'm not advocating for changes to the bail reform law. I'm advocating for a complete and total repeal of the bail reform law until we can get things under control here in New York. Number 2.
No, not for applause. If they boo you, I'll ask.
Start booing me. Number two, inflation. We need to make sure that we are suspending the gas tax. Right now in Albany, there was only a partial suspension to the gas tax. We need a full suspension. I have also advocated for a 2-year tax moratorium on all small businesses. I really think that this is something that we need to be a session in Albany. Post-pandemic relief, over 1/3 of all small businesses are never coming back in our state. 1/3. That is a large number of businesses that have gone out of business. So I'm advocating for a 2-year tax moratorium for the businesses that have survived, so we can give them some breathing room in order to grow. And lastly, I'm a big proponent of the gifted and talented programs. We need to make sure that every school has a gifted and talented program. We just saw the other day a school shooter. How many times does this need to happen before we have school safety officers in our schools? We must have school safety officers. And I'm a big proponent of standardized testing. I think it's very, very important. And, you know, these are the issues that I'm running on. I hope to represent you well in Albany, and I look forward to taking any of your questions. Thank you very much.
My name is Toby Stavisky, and, well, let me tell you a little bit about myself first. I was here last month to discuss some of the issues, and the issue of gifted and talented in the specialized high schools came up. I moved to Queens when I got married, grew up on the west side of Manhattan. I attended public school, and then Bronx High School of Science, Syracuse, where I had a scholarship, came back for Hunter and Queens College Graduate School. I was a high school social studies teacher. And in fact, I raised my son, or we raised our son, here in District 25 in the neighboring district in Whitestone. He attended PS 193, and well, he also went to science. So I obviously have been one of the people who vehemently opposed the previous mayor's attempt to eliminate the gifted and talented program and the specialized high school. I think that there is a way we can improve the diversity without lowering the standards, because specialized high schools are extremely important, as are gifted and talented programs. I was, as I said, a high school social studies teacher, and I want to associate my comments with what Rob just said about additional programs, because not only did I teach at Brooklyn Tech, quite frankly, the commute was just too long. I also taught at Thomas Edison, which is a vocational and technical high school in Jamaica in the new 11th Senate District. And I think that is an extremely important concept, that not every child has to go to college. Some kids can go into apprenticeship programs We have vocational high schools, and I am a big proponent of really having a whole list of options available to the families. In Albany, I chair the Committee on Higher Education, which I'll get back to in a moment, but I also serve on the Racing and Wagering Committee, the Finance Committee, the Ethics Committee, and Education. As chair of the Higher Ed Committee, I am extremely proud of the fact that in the almost 4 years, we have not had an increase in tuition for CUNY or SUNY. We leveled off the tuition, and we are increasing state support for public higher education, because to me, that is what keeps the kids off the streets. Education is such an opportunity equalizer for people who come to this country as immigrants, or who come to this country with aspirations, and it's education that increases their mobility and everything else involved. Let's see. In Albany, we did deal with the bail issue. Judges have always had discretion. They have always had discretion to keep violent felons off the streets. What happened was we realized that there were changes that needed to be made, and we improved the discretion. We included hate crimes, we included illegal guns, possession of weapons, and repeat offenders. So the law that we are talking about was improved. Are there additional changes? Of course, because public safety is so important to our society. I shudder when I saw the newspaper this morning, a high school student or a former high school student in St. Louis, and a number of people were shot and killed. And unfortunately, he was killed, because we've got to make sure that we deal with issues of mental health. I want to summarize by saying I associate myself with what the Assemblyman said in terms of the need to improve public safety, without a doubt. 15 seconds? Thank you. I'm going to exercise the moderator's prerogative to give the first question. As you got a flavor within the questions I asked of Ed and Rob, it's going to be a two-pronged question, one prong for each. So, preface, this seat was represented for 46 years until 4 years ago by two men, the late Senator Frank Padovan and then Tony Avella, who, while one was a committed conservative, one was definitely a committed liberal, were very much moderate on many issues, reached across party lines. Senator Padovan was one of the sponsors of the bill to ban assault weapons. He also supported handgun restriction. Tony Avella was a strong supporter of the specialized high schools and not watering down the test, and also, of course, famously joined with the Independent Democratic Caucus. So in that spirit of the two men who held this seat for 46 years, Stefano, same question I asked Rob about vaccines, regardless of what your view is on the COVID vaccine and applying that to school children. Some in our party have called for the elimination of all vaccine requirements for school children, such as mumps, measles, chickenpox, rubella, diphtheria. Will you pledge to oppose any such effort to limit the current schedule of vaccine requirements for school children? And secondly, will you support strengthening of the New York red flag laws to get, regardless of how we all feel about the Second Amendment, to get guns away from the mentally ill?
Yeah, absolutely. So to start with the beginning of your question, I'm the only candidate that has been cross-endorsed by a Democrat. City Councilman Bob Holden crossed party lines to endorse me. In terms of vaccine mandates, I've been very vocal about the fact that I do not believe in vaccine mandates. In terms of schools, what I will say is I believe there must be a religious exemption for anybody who has a deeply held religious belief. But in terms of the laws that are on the books right now, the only thing that I would change is religious exemption. There are those in our society that do not believe that they want to get this vaccine. And if that is their deeply held religious belief,
Not talking about the COVID vaccine.
yes. No, I'm talking about across the board. Yeah. Across the board. If they have a deeply held religious belief, we must respect that. So, in my opinion, there must be religious exemption. And then in terms of red flag laws, look, we should not have guns in the hands of the mentally ill. If we can go to Albany and we can legislate to make sure that we are taking guns away from those people, that is great. I'm all for that. The only thing that I will say is Albany seems to be schizophrenic on the way that they deal with guns. They say, oh, we don't want guns in the hands of the mentally ill. But then, in the bail reform law, they're letting people out who have possessions of firearms. On a playground, on school grounds, if you have a firearm that is illegal, you're let back out. If you're caught with an illegal firearm, you're let back out. So we need to get serious, and we can either legislate like ideologues, or we could legislate pragmatically. And I'm in favor of legislating pragmatically. Whatever is going to lower shootings and violence in our state, I am fully and completely in support of that.
Okay. And the final you also stand up to the extremists in your party and support strengthening of Kendra's law to get these mentally ill hospitalized and taking their medication so they're not out there, whether with guns or shoving people.
We did strengthen Kendra's law recently. Secondly, the red flag laws, absolutely.
So that's a question for him.
Sorry.
I trust that you're for red flag law.
Yeah, and we're using it. That's the point. Right. The courts, the police officials are applying to the courts for the red flag exemption so that we do keep the weapons. But yes, of course I support.
And you spoke about bail reform and said that, we've rolled back some of that reform. We still do not allow judges to take into account dangerousness, the most obvious criteria, unlike 49 other states. Will you pledge to support a complete rollback of this cashless bail, which would allow judges to take account of the dangerousness of a criminal suspect before they release them?
I would not support a rollback because I'm thinking a total rollback. Let me explain. There are young people steal, there are a number of people, for example, they steal a backpack. They can't afford bail, so they spend 2 years incarcerated before they are convicted. That, to me, is the problem. We've spoken about the unevenness of the past, and that was the reason why these proposals were made. Because somebody convicted of a crime in Herkimer may be able to pay for bail, not convicted, accused of a crime. And in New York City, they can't afford it. And that, to me, is unfair. What I do support is continuing the judge's discretion. The judges have the discretion. The district attorney charges, indicts the accused. The issue becomes what happens if the DA, such as the duck sauce killer, perfect example, happened in Forest Hills. She had him indicted, and it was the judge who released him on bail. Now, you can't tell me that a person accumulates all of that duck sauce, packets, the soy sauce in his refrigerator, as the police discovered, and then he's released on bail without being sent for a psychiatric evaluation. That, to me, is the issue. I do support additional changes, but as the governor and the attorney general have said.
I'd like you to go on this one because I didn't feel like it limited you to my own question, but in fairness to Stefano, you get 30 seconds and we'll turn it over to Toby.
They went up to Albany and they changed the law. Does anybody in here feel more safe?
No.
So it's not working. Michael Palacios, who was the man in that McDonald's that was waving that axe around, right? Everyone saw the video. The judge had him in front of him, and because of bail reform, he was released. Time and time again, we see the same thing, and they're talking about changes. For my city, no more half measures. We're going up there. We are going to get rid of the whole thing. And hold on, no, don't stop. I gotta get through this. And listen, Senator Stavisky has changed her position on this 3 times since the beginning of this campaign. At the Deepdale Civic, Senator Stavisky, you were saying that nobody violent is getting released on bail reform, and you were saying that it's the judge's fault, we don't need to make any changes, and now suddenly there's a need for a change. Senator Stavisky is running on the Working Families Party. That should tell you everything you need to know about her priorities. The Working Families line put out a direct statement that said, New York City officials, if you do not want to defund the police, we will not stand with you. At the end of the day, we've seen what 11 terms, 22 years of Senator Stavisky is bringing.
Okay.
Right? It's time for a change.
This crime surge is a national problem. Let's understand that. It is a national problem. In those cities with Republican mayors and Republican governors, you still have the same increase in Miami.
What have you done for here? That's the important part.
Wait a minute.
Go here.
Shut up and sit down. Let her finish. You can ask a question, but we don't interrupt people. Okay? Whatever party it is, you listen to them and you vote what you want.
This is a national problem. I have not changed my mind. I said back in 2020, I was looking through old clips where I said it was not chiseled in stone. That was 2.5 years ago. We have to take a look, no matter the consequences. The governor has said this, the attorney general just said it. We have to take a look at the facts, not fake news, but the facts. The facts are, we don't know the statistics. What has happened with repeat offenders? Are they committing crimes? We don't know. Let me finish. One more sentence. Let me just complete that sentence.
I have to respond to that. That is
No, we don't get sir rebuttal. You have one sentence.
The one sentence I wanted to add is that we have to deal with the numbers, and we have to look at what is happening. We know there's an increase. We've got to figure out how to solve it.
Repeal.
Okay, if we have some, this fellow had his hand up.
Just to change the subject for a second conference.
Can you hold it then? Because I think this is a very good and important exchange. Can we move this to someone who wants to follow up on this? How about that?
Dennis, you can't, the guy said it's a question, you can't decide who should answer a question. This man just has a question. You're making the decision what kind of question he should answer.
No, hold on. If you feel that we haven't covered this topic enough, fine.
I think we're having a very good debate here. It really gets to a central issue, and if I'd like the audience to participate in that. I really don't want to go over to a question that's totally extraneous to that. And like I said, hold it, I'll come back to you. I think that's not only is that not unfair in all respect, I think that is good moderation to keep the debate going. So let's let that.
All this time, I haven't got any answers. But I'd like to go back to the cashless bail. Since this cashless bail reform new senators put it out, I think the Asian population was the first victim at the beginning of the COVID. Then we have the BLM policy or BLM activity that came up, and the Asians were the victims. They were the first victims of this cashless bail. It's not that they're not arrested, that they were arrested in the front door and they were let out in the back door. And they just arrest them and docket the cases and then let them go. Those people who were killed in the subway, they were killed down the street. They never had a chance to talk about using the cash to pay anything. They didn't even have a chance. How can you say you're not going to change this cashless bail?
Okay, we gotta wrap up the question. It's clear what you're asking.
No, I want to finish, sir.
No.
I want to finish.
I turned to you. I ticked off half of the audience to turn to you. You've made your question clear. I happen to agree with you, but let's let the candidates answer.
I'm very respectful. I want to have this chance to talk.
No, you're filibustering. You're filibustering.
No, I'm not filibustering.
This is the reaction you're getting from someone who agrees 100% with you. You're filibustering. You're wasting everyone's time. No.
You're not giving me a fair
Give her 10 seconds.
Please sit down.
Give her 10 seconds to finish.
I want to finish my question. I want to finish what I have felt for the last 2 years. We've been victimized. Nobody has been there protecting us. The police didn't have the budget. The judge is not prosecuting all the criminals. And the people who were killed recently at the subway never got a chance to say anything. That's all I want to say. I'm sorry. That's the question. She said no. I know she said no.
All right.
Okay. All right, first, let me just... I'm not going to ask you to repeat the question. In the state budget, we put in a large sum of money. I think it was somewhere around $30 million to deal with AIDS. Now, the governor came to Queens College to announce it. This was probably in late June, early July. The governor came to announce that grant. She had people, leaders of the Asian American community, many leaders, to announce the grant against AIDS. Now, my opponent was out there picketing, booing, chanting against me and against the governor. We put the money in the budget. It is being, there are a number of issues in terms of the allocation, but the money is there and it's going to be spent to teach people that hate is wrong, particularly hate directed against the Asian American community. I have been to many meetings why we should be teaching AAPI history in our schools. John Lewis is the sponsor of that legislation. We are trying to encompass it with the regions if we can't get it enacted into law. And hopefully we will, the judges, as I said, we added hate crimes as one of the aspects that the judge can not grant bail.
Stefano?
Yeah, let's stop the nonsense for a minute. We're not going to teach, listen, I'm all for teaching history in the classroom, right? Throwing money at this issue is not going to be what fixes it. What fixes the issue, right, is getting those criminals off the street. That is going to be what puts the nail in the coffin. And Senator Stavisky, I can't even believe that you would bring something like that up and lie like you just did. At the end of the day, we were out there because this was nothing but virtue signaling. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Asian Wave Alliance because they know that I'm going to go up there and I'm going to advocate for their issues, okay? At the end of the day, this comes down to bail and policing. That's it. We are not going to, these people who are out on the streets committing these crimes, pushing people into subway tracks, targeting the Asian American community, they're not going to learn about Asian American history in the classroom and go, oh, you know what, maybe I won't push this person off the subway track. That is just complete and total nonsense. And you know what, Senator Stavisky, you want to bring up our record on the Asian American community? You put on the Regents Board Shino Tanakawa, who said, quote, Asian Americans are part of the white hierarchy structure, wants to get rid of gifted and talented programs, and wants to get rid of standardized testing. Our track records couldn't look any more different. At the end of the day, we know what we're going to get from Senator Stavisky, and it's grant money to stop hate crimes, right? If we want real action, please.
I'll go back to this guy now. If you really want
This guy is on our board.
The other day, I heard that the President Governor addressing the housing crisis, not only in New York City, but New York State, said she was going to consider eliminating any single-family restrictions. In other words, all single-family homes can now become 2, 3, 4, 5-family homes. Where does that stand, and where do you stand on that?
I'll jump in. I'm totally and completely against that bill. Single-family homes are so critically important to the culture of a neighborhood, especially here. That bill, there is a bill that was put on the floor, not currently, it's being held by Brad Hoylman, that would get rid of all single-family zoning in the state, right? I'm completely and totally against that. They want to change our middle-class community that we have here, and frankly, they want to punish us. They want to punish us for having a middle-class lifestyle, right? So now, you may have a skyscraper next to your house because we need more affordable housing.
We already do.
And listen, that's wrong. That is completely and totally wrong. I am committed to making sure that our zoning stays the same. And not only that, this is a city issue. This is a city issue. Why is it going to the state senate, circumventing the city council? So, again, I think that we need to make sure that our city councilwoman has the ability to maintain our zoning, and I'm vehemently against the abolition of single-family zoning.
I've seen the governor's statement on that, and I find that a little difficult. Of course, we're not going to pass, Senator, that bill, if indeed it was introduced. First of all, the legislature is not in session, and all bills were recommitted to committee. That bill never was reported out of committee. There are thousands of bills in a similar situation. Obviously, I don't support it, but it's not going to happen. Certainly not between now and January.
I'm worried
And very unlike, when my opponent brought that issue up, I called Senator Hoylman, and he said he would check it out. He did not, I guess he is a sponsor, I'll take your word for it. I have not seen the governor support that bill. And frankly, I would not, obviously not support it. It's not even worth discussing.
She said she was considering it.
Well,
It wasn't her.
budget go?
You're concerned
No,
about
that was
work
not in
discussing.
her budget. What was in her budget was the ADU issue. The addition, that's different. The ADU was a little different. That is the accessory dwelling unit. That was taken out by, the governor put it in her January budget, and in the 30-day amendments, she took it out.
Are you in favor of that? Yeah.
Okay, that's all. I was actually waving my hand so that I can learn. Because I remember just like around 10 minutes ago, Senator was saying that we need numbers to work on the situation about crime. And then like 5 minutes ago, she was saying that she was able to quote that the governor, Hoku, had allocated $30 million of budget for the hate crime. How do she come up with this number if you still need to wait for numbers to work out the polls? But at the same time, I was keep hearing the police officer, the police station will keep releasing numbers. Hate crime was up 300%. Wasn't that the number? I'm just trying to learn.
Anyone want to?
Yeah, I think we're talking separate issues.
So are we
The
still talking about
numbers
hate
on
crime?
hate crimes,
Or-
and I was at the rally in downtown Flushing about 2 weeks ago, on that hate crime issue, where we were trying to bring to light, particularly the domestic violence issue. The hate crime numbers are up, and that is outrageous.
And they
And the governor, let me finish. The governor came to announce in the budget that we passed in April, she announced the appropriation to combat hate crimes. Yes, I think education is important. I beg to differ. I think education is extremely important. But there is no substitute for having the facts before you make a decision.
But when they say they want more numbers, they want more victims. That's the bottom line, okay? I'm so sick and tired of hearing we need the numbers. Rape is up in the 111th precinct by 300%. We have the numbers in front of us. We know what we have to do. It's simple. Repeal the entirety of the law. There are no more changes that we can make. That's it. Period. End of story. And in terms of the hate crimes that you were talking about, listen, like I said, I am all for teaching Asian American history in our schools. That is great. That is not going to stop hate crimes. These people who are criminals and mentally ill need to be off of our streets. That's it. That's how you stop this. We've done this before. Stop. We've done this before. We can do it again. We used to be the safest big city in the world, and I beg to differ on those statistics, Senator Stavisky. Recidivism is up 3 times as high as it was in 2017 before this law was enacted. 10 career criminals, 10 career criminals went out to commit 500 new crimes. 21.7% of all those that were taken in for a nonviolent offense went out to commit a felony. Even Mayor Adams is saying we have to change the law. He disagrees with you. He knows that violent criminals are being let back out onto the streets. This is dangerous. If we have Senator Stavisky for another term, our city might not survive.
Okay. Let's do one more question, and then turn it over to closing statements, because our congressional candidates who I asked to get here early have been waiting patiently. We're now late, but they're getting to see what a hot bench this is. And no, I'm not going to call on my wife. So, and Steve spoke before. So how about that lady right over there?
Sorry.
Speak up.
I feel very strongly, as the Assemblyman said earlier, the Reproductive Health Act, ERA, I support it. I am pro-choice. Sorry, but I'm not going to change my position. We disagree, I assume, but nevertheless, I think decision should be made by the woman and not by the Supreme Court.
Up until what point? Exactly. The day before birth? Up until when? Birth.
Okay. You wanna answer that, or?
Let her answer that.
Yeah, you
Up
wanna
until
answer-
what
up until
point?
what point?
You support live birth abortions?
No, and it's very rare, I don't care what facts. The fact is, it is very,
8.5
very
months?
rare. And I do believe that abortion should be rare, it should be safe.
At the end of the day, we woke up with the same rights, women woke up with the same rights that they did after Roe v. Wade was struck down by the Supreme Court here in New York State. In New York State, the Assembly and the State Senate both codified Roe v. Wade long before Roe v. Wade was a law, and at the end of the day, this is not an issue that either of us should be touching. And I'll get to the next part of your question, I promise. We can look at what happened in Kansas. In Kansas, not a state that many people think is the paragon of, liberal ideals, right? In Kansas, they had a referendum, and most of the people in Kansas found that they wanted abortion to still stick around in their state. So at the end of the day, I have no power over the law. I will not be able to change the law. The Assembly will not pass it through. The State Senate will not pass it through. The governor will not pass it through. So in New York State, that is not going away.
What's your position?
It's not going away.
What's
It's
your
not going away.
position?
Stance on it is.
In my opinion, I am personally pro-life. However, I would not change the law. I would not change the law.
Starting with Stefano for opening statements, so for closing statements, so I think we've set up to 2.5 minutes each for
Okay.
Toby.
All right, first, thank you for inviting me. My opponent forgot to mention the fact that when the Supreme Court in the Dobbs decision came forward, he rejoiced at the repeal, so let's be truthful.
Do you have the facts on that, Senator Stavisky? Where and when?
Let her talk. Closing statement.
Why?
No, we didn't.
You have your chance.
I try not to interrupt. Let me talk about some of the local issues which I think are important. Number one, the zooming, I think spot zoning is a mistake. That overlay, that C2-2 overlay, mistake. In terms of the 111th precinct, obviously I do not support defunding the police. And in fact, in the state budget, I provided $20,000 for the 111th precinct for the Explorers program. The wetlands, I support the environmental bond issue so that wetlands can be part of the future of our community, of this community. I live in the 11th Senate District, and I would appreciate your support. We may disagree. However, I have the experience and, more importantly, the commitment to look at the facts before I make a decision. We've got to discuss the real issues, the economy, jobs. These are the significant issues. Public safety, obviously, at the top of the list. So I think my time is probably up. Thank you.
First off, you have the toughest job in the room, so we should give a round of applause at the end. Look, I'm running for state senate because I understand the issues and I understand what matters to us. Our communities are being attacked, and frankly, in my opinion, we have seen what Toby and Stavisky has done with 11 terms in 22 years. We need a change. If they wanted to see a change happen in Albany, they could have done it at any point. We know what happens when we keep electing the same people. I want our city to be the safest big city in the world. I want our children to have the best education, and I'm going to be somebody that goes and fights for our community. I'm going to be somebody that you can count on me if I'm up there and that bill that she claims is never going to happen about single-family zoning, I will fight it tooth and nail. Senator Stavisky has said a lot of lies tonight, frankly. And for you to end it off with a blatant lie saying that I celebrated after Roe v. Wade was taken down, you have no idea what I was doing when Roe v. Wade was taken down. And frankly, Senator Stavisky has turned this race into a mud-throwing contest. She wants to talk about me. I want to talk about the issues that are affecting our community. I will make sure that when we go up to Albany, when we are elected on November 8th, the community's concerns are at the top of my mind constantly. And to show you how committed I am to hearing all of you, I have my business cards on me, and I'm going to give each and every one of you one of them. It has my personal cell phone number on it. You can call me up and yell at me. You can call me up and tell me how I'm doing. I believe that we need to talk to our constituents. And at the end of the day, I will always be there for you. Thank you very much.